Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a best of 9 series of top level StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today are two personal favorites facing off against each other in the bottom right hand corner of game number 1 on a map called Abyssal Reef, playing with the red Terran SCVs. We have the world champion of StarCraft 2. He's got a little polar bear spinning around on the main command center. Of course, we're looking at Clem's main base. His opponent, all the way in the top left, a man who's been reinventing Protoss versus Zerg. Let's see what he can do against the #1 Terran on the planet. We're looking at Zoun's main Nexus. Alrighty, Zoun going up against Clem in a best of 9 series. This particular show match was put on by Enki, so big shout out to Enki for sending over these replays to me. I'm very excited to find out. I heard that these games are actually awesome, and it's a very close series. Now, Zoun, back in September, completed his mandatory military service over in South Korea. He's been on the up and up ever since returning, and it's become very clear to me that he is once more ranked amongst the very best players on the planet. Now, he's going up against Clem. Don't get me wrong, Clem's certainly my personal favorite going into this series. It's just that Clem is really good at the game and he doesn't really lose a whole lot in the first place. Really, the only player that I see him lose, like the only player that he regularly loses against that plays Protoss is MaxPax. MaxPax is the one, I guess, that can be a little bit of a nuisance, but across the board, it is really not that big of a deal for him. So we'll have to find out exactly what ended up going down. Obviously, that does not mean that it's going to be a straightforward series, but if I had to pick my personal favorite, it would certainly be Clem. Now, one thing apparently, since I'm a professional commentator, I forgot to turn on my health bars. But there we go. All right, now, we're starting off on Abyssal Reef. Very large map. Also the home of our friend. Where is he? Oh! I mean, I thought I saw a little... Okay, well, we'll find him later, I'm sure, if this map, at the very least, goes up to a few more bases. It is also the home of none other than Shark Bro. Well, if Zoun has any say in the matter, it seems to me that maybe he wants to be a little bit of a nuisance, although Cybercore is already done, second pylon has already been put down, so not an easy cheese for him to go for. He hasn't really chosen a tech choice just yet, though, but this should just be a good old Twilight Council in just a little bit. Clem, interestingly enough, going into a double Reaper start, so both players scoutless other than this probe. Maybe, you know what, since he's going up against the world champ, he's just bringing him 5 minerals. How nice is that? He wanted to time this in such a way that the Reaper would be halfway across the map, so this is actually a bit of an unfortunate timing here for that peace offering of Zoun. Generally, the Reaper will spawn right around 2 minutes, 2:02 or so at latest, meaning that he was waiting until about 2.5 minutes. These Reapers probably take about 30 seconds to get across the map. Clem obviously did make a reactor first, and then he started pumping out those Reapers 2 at a time, so Probius arrived right as the 2 Reapers popped out and instantly died. It's a little sad. It's a little unfortunate. I've seen the Hunger Games. And even though Probius right there volunteered as a tribute, he did not live for very long. Does that mean that I am the capital? No, I am the... You remember that guy on the stage who's always making... I'm the guy on the stage in the Hunger Games. You guys are the dudes living in the capital. That's messed up. I hope you're wearing your fancy peacock-looking outfits. Anyways, we have a Hellion, a Reaper start. One of the Stalkers already taking a lot of damage, but obviously this is not an easy target for our... Where did these probes even go? For our, I guess he wanted to hide them by clumping them up together so the Hellions could easily fight. Anyway, he lost one of the Stalkers there, but he, at the very least, is buying himself some time. This is not yet over, though. Zoun trying to make a full wall off. Shield battery is a little late to my liking. It is indeed, by the way, going to be Blink on the back of this, which is the norm. Probes just here to take a little bit of a beating. So far, good control, though, by the Protoss player. Really minimizing the losses. Another Stalker falls, and this is certainly not over yet. I think this is now turning into an absolute disaster for Zoun. And at this rate, we don't even get to see Shark Bro. No. Hyper-aggression from Clem. Major skill check to start the series off with. And it seems to me that without perfect micro, Clem is just, well, incredibly far ahead now. It's one of those things where if you are a MaxPax or maybe a hero, you generally get the job done. I think that shield battery on the low ground needed to be built a little bit earlier. Now, ultimately, we have 16 probe kills. Keep in mind that this is a very committed push. It's not like Clem can just get away with dealing no damage and then still be even. So He purposely chose to go for a strategy like this. Now he's even gonna rub some salt in the... Oh. Nice splitting there on the jimmies as well. Making sure that none of them were gonna take critical damage there from the splash of the Widow Mine. Yeah, that's a very empty-looking production tab right now for Zoun. He does have Blink. He's got Blink, he's got 2 gateways. And he's got a Dream. Now, it's important to have a Dream. But also, it's a best of 9 series. I hope you got yourself a drink, by the way. I have a large water bottle. I've also got some coffee here. I was having a quick little look a couple days ago when I was deciding what series to cast. And I noticed that some of the games in this particular series are very long. So, yeah, I hope you got yourself a drink. I don't remember exactly which games they are, but I do know there are some very long games in this particular best of 9. So we should be here for quite a long time. GG. Plaza Violeta Neon. That is apparently the name of this map, at least in the replay files. A lot of the modern maps, actually, so this is a pretty old one. Neon Violet Square was built quite a few years ago at this point, but a lot of the newer ones don't actually have different names in, well, the different languages. So I would imagine that something like ley lines will just be called ley lines in the Spanish, in the Portuguese, in Korean, like anything would just have the same name. Back in the day, all of the maps would get translated too. I know. How sad is that? Anyways, we find ourselves from Abyssal Reef now on Neon Violet, and that's another big map. Now the previous one, it was a quickie. Clem, well, decided to just rush as many units across the map as he possibly could. And Zoun just never really got the ball going. So let's see what we can do right here on this one then. Are we once more gonna open up with a quick reactor? Are we once again gonna pump out Reapers 2 at a time and then go into Hellion aggression? Technically on the larger maps, those builds are worse because it takes longer for those Terran units to get across the map. Which is maybe also why you expected a little bit less, but I guess Zoun had all of the troops. And he also had the heads up, right? Even though Probius died, even though the tribute there did end up going down. Well, he still got at least a little bit of time there to check out exactly what was happening. And he saw the Reapers coming in at the earliest possible moment. So not quite an optimal start there for Zoun, but also not a build that we very commonly see from Terran players. And apparently Clem is going to mix it up a bit now. We're going to just go straight into a Marine. And he's using this early game to his advantage now as well. By, yeah, this advantage in the series right now by skipping the Worker Scout altogether. It's a small change. If Zoun was going for any sort of early game aggression, this could obviously be extremely dangerous. Because with a Marine first and no STV Scout, Clem is not going to see the other side of the map for at least another couple minutes. Problem is, Zoun has already picked his poison, and it's going to just be a normal start. But maybe in the next game, you will be able to go for some sort of aggression and punish this greed. Because Clem has now gone for no Worker Scout 2 games in a row. Problem is, say Zoun loses this game and now he's 2-0 behind in the match. Are you really brave enough at that point to go for a full cheese in the 3rd game of the series? So I like what Clem is doing here across the board. It's one of the reasons why I love casting series. I mean, I enjoy casting individual games as well, but usually the series will give us a much better perspective. Because now that, well, Clem has got a bit more wiggle room. Because he's 1-0 ahead, he can choose to go for something a little different. It's going to be a 2-1-1 here. We should see a starport here in just a little bit, but for now it's just going to be good old Marines and that command center. This is also quite a tricky map for Protoss to scout on because this base all the way in the top left is really nice and tucked away. Likewise for Terran, but it's very much so up to the Protoss player to figure out what the Terran is going for here. It'll be a Stargate opener though here from Zoun. So one thing we've been seeing from some of the very best Protoss players on the planet lately is that Sentry first, Sentry into Stalker. I like it a lot. In this particular instance, though, Zoun not opening up with anything like that just yet. This is a bit of a risky build, specifically against players, yep, like for example this, that go for a Cyclone beginning. So Marine Cyclone shuts down this type of build really hard. So if Zoun has a slight little slip-up, this can be the end of the game immediately. Problem is that the Adepts get killed very easily by the Cyclones, and then also, well, obviously the Phoenixes. Also a pretty easy target to hit. Stimpack is going to be done by about 5 minutes. We should see the starport coming up. Yep, there it is. We do have another tech lab over here, so probably go into another barracks in a moment. But for now, though, Zoun is going to try and just go into the Phoenixes. Now, Phoenixes usually are followed up with either Charge or Colossi. We'll have to see what Zoun decides to go for. But either way, it's going to be Colossi. Either way, it's a very passive beginning here for Zoun. This is very much so the type of build that you play as Protoss when you feel like you can just turn into a punching bag. So he's going to split up the units right now, anticipating some sort of medevac drop. It's kind of beautiful looking at this. Each of the Phoenixes going their own ways, hoping that maybe one of them can get so lucky to intercept the medevac. None of that, though, is out. So we are going to go into the good old, double medevac production right now. And then we should see some medevacs accompanied with Widow Mines and all the rest of it eventually. Okay. So, a big macro game in the building here. In the building? In the making. Well, both of them are building up a big macro game. There's indeed that vertical expansion right now coming up for Zoun. Rather than taking the pocket expansion, he feels like he can get away with the more forward one. Well, maybe, you know what? Cyclone's generally a good choice. But if you can pick him up for free, yeah, it's not bad. Stimpack not yet done. Would love to get those medevacs, but the Marines will be able to prevent this from happening. And Clem immediately, dude. Clem immediately loads up the medevacs. Little dangerous here, Clem. Gotta be wondering as well as Zoun right now where those units went to. Can't believe he just immediately sent them in. Yeah, no, obviously he's figured out now what's happening. Clem at this point, though, is hoping that maybe he can find indeed this unprotected expansion. There's really not that many units available yet, though, for Zoun. 16 Marines, Stimpack, and 2 medevacs. Is it enough to shut all of this down? Double shield battery. No, 1 shield battery coming up. There's the Marines, though, trying to pop all of those units out of the sky, but there's plenty of Protoss units on the ground to keep all of this at bay. Good intersection, by the way, as well, by that observer. The medevacs were spotted. And so far, just a single Phoenix going down on the side of Protoss. And he's been able to get that third command center, or that third nexus now, up and going pretty easily. Okay. Ooh. Second Stargate going down. Now that's a little funky. So we're going Colossi, sure. Phoenix is into Colossi, a very normal follow-up. That is something we see all of the time. Now he's stopped producing Phoenixes? And he has put down a second Stargate. We'll have to keep an eye out. Yeah, I think he actually just didn't mean to do that. Probably just spent a bit too much of his money. Couldn't continue the Phoenix production for a bit, but I'm thinking we're doubling down on the Phoenix play. Well, Colossi are going to be phenomenal for the time being against pure Marine-based armies. Clem, though, is going to try and continue the pressure. If you look at the minimap right now, there's a line of red moving across. Clem only just now really going into that third CC. So this one's quite a bit later, of course, than Zoun, who's been mining his for some time already. Zoun, though, doesn't really care about what Terran's up to at this point. He just really wants to, well, stay alive, right? Like, he's playing survival here, and he's just playing his own game. And it's up to Clem to try and stop it if he doesn't like it. But indeed, we are going to go for the mass Phoenix play. Very funky. I like it, though. I've always been a fan of Phoenixes. I think Phoenixes are some of the coolest units in the game. Going double Stargate Phoenix against Terran is a little funky. Usually you make, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10, right? On a crazy day, you can kind of make 10. And then you transition away. In this instance, it seems like we are doubling down on mass Phoenix. You don't make a second Stargate to then only make, like, 2. Alright, Fleet Beacon coming up. There is a ranged upgrade for Phoenixes. Anion Pulse Crystals. I feel like it's something that I've mentioned like 4 times over the last 2 weeks. It is an upgrade. Oh, third Stargate goes down. It is an upgrade that we rarely see, or at least saw. Maybe I'm just accidentally picking the games where people do end up going for the Anion Pulse Crystals. But that's pretty wild. It's +2 range for Phoenixes. Plus, it makes their little attack beam pink, which is an even bigger buff. Only concern that I have is that if Clem decides to go Ghosts, which he certainly will, Marine Ghost, couple of Vikings up in the air, I mean, it is... You can still use EMP on these units. There it is. This is an Anion Pulse Crystals rush. I am inclined to believe that this is bad. But the map is huge, and it seems like Clem is just sort of marching around, not really committing to any aggression. Keep in mind that Vikings are gonna get killed. The Vikings are... Ooh, Widowmine. Burrowed in a weird position. At this point, Clem also sees the additional Phoenixes. Although that's an hallucinated one. Keep in mind that... Oh, we're going straight carrier now, too. Phoenixes will kill Vikings, at which point the Colossi will kill all of the Marines. The theory is strong. I'm just a little afraid that we're gonna see Marines and Marauders just stemming through and killing everything. But I guess if Zoun manages to arrive here at full Skytles, this is effectively him doing a Skytles rush against Terran. We see this all the time against Zerg, but... I don't think Clem knows, by the way. Like, Clem knows that there's an additional Stargate, and I guess maybe, like, he's seen the amount of Phoenixes. He can kind of put one and one together. I'm assuming that will allow him to go into a second starport a little quicker, too. He does have the Ghost coming up, but he's mostly just playing SimCity of his own. CC is going to get put down on the low ground, +2 air coming up already for Zoun. Yep, there's barracks 6, 7, and 8. So Clem is playing his own game now, too. Well, now the scanner reveals exactly what's happening. And is there anything that Clem can still really do about it? 2-2 is a long while away for Terran. But I think Zoun needs to be halted in one way or another. He's got an amazing army here, though. It is just the most expensive units that Protoss can produce. Very different from that Mass Stalker Zealot army that we've been seeing from Hero, for example. Isn't it fun how, like, there's so many different ways to approach this, though, as a Protoss player now? Used to always feel a little bit... Oh, dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. He's gonna intercept that with ease. We used to just see the same type of unit compositions a lot, but now Hero is doing that, like, 100 worker mass zealot type of style, where he's basically pretending he's a Zerg player. Zoun is doing the polar opposite of that, and he's only building the most expensive Protoss units in the game. We don't even have a Twilight Council. There's no charge. There's nothing. I don't think we've had a single zealot. Oh, there's 3 of them. Okay, never mind. There's a couple of them. But they're scouts for the most part. Well, let's see. Will it work against Clem? At this point, Clem is going to be able to finish up 2-2. Clem is, by the way, settling in for a macro game as well, as he's adding on additional command centers. EMP is important here for Terran. He needs to get rid of all of the energy on those Phoenixes in particular, but also just any of the units here up in the air. Any of the units on the ground, too. I mean, this is a scary army for Protoss. It's not even done yet. Do you go for the mothership, by the way? Is the mothership worth it? As a Skytles player, do you want to go Mama Ship against Terran? I think you'd sooner want something like Storm. I think Storm is probably a great idea. The mothership is still useful for its spells, but it's a lot easier for Terran to kill than it is for the Zerg generally. Because, you know, you make Vikings, and you're already making Vikings, so you just keep making Vikings. Look at this. He's going additional Stargates. So Zoun has just entirely skipped early game. He's entirely skipped mid game. He's just gone straight to tier 3. And there's really nothing Clem could have done about it, right? Like, I mean, maybe there's some moves Clem could have made. But this is not an easy decision to make. Well, this is a big push here from the Protoss player. We don't yet have any sort of storm, though. No real splash damage other than those Colossi. And even though Clem just sort of stood his ground there, I think it's okay. He recognized that there was no splash. That was very sloppy in the end by Zoun. I think Zoun was like, yo, look at me. I got away with all that greed. And then Clem was like, yo, I have dudes with guns. Yeah, I've got guys with guns, and, you know, some of them are big guns, small guns. Some of them have multiple guns. I have guys with guns, and we can get some work done with it. Zoun is going to immediately remax on the same units again. A little clumsy. You need some sort of splash. I think the Colossi are nice, but I think you probably want to add in Psionic Storm. I think Psionic Storm would have been okay. At the very least, it would force the Terran player to make moves. If they can just stand and fight, it's extremely potent. Now, something else that's extremely potent is the Ghost Academy, a researching tactical nuke. Fusion core coming up here for Clem. 3 additional starports. We're gaming. We are gaming right now. Gold base coming up for Zoun. Jimmy has decided that he wants to spend the rest of his life hitting a pylon. Good job, Jimmy. We're proud of you, dude. Yeah, we are cooking something here. I just don't know. I think this build from Zoun is cool, but I'm kind of feeling like we're missing something, you know? Like, he's cooking something, but it's like he's followed along with a recipe he found on YouTube. And some of them are amazing, and some of them are questionable. He's making dishwasher salmon right now. Ooh, that Widow Mine dealing more damage than the Protoss army. I found out about an amazing dish called dishwasher salmon. Apparently a thing that's eaten in North America. Where you wrap salmon in like aluminum foil. And then you throw it in the dish. It's so cursed. Just use an oven, man. We're not animals. Just... Don't use... I don't like it. No, no. If you Google it, though, I'm not making this up. Dishwasher salmon is apparently a very real thing. I've never considered it. Especially not with how expensive salmon can be. It just seems like a real big waste. Anyway, Zealot run by coming in. We also have this abomination of a Terran base. That's a lot of missile turrets. Clem taking a page out of the Zerg's book right now. Zergs are very well known to make mass spore crawler. Well, maybe there's no movable missile turrets, but at least there's guys in the missile turret. And as we learned, well, maybe a year or so ago at this point, there must always be a man in the missile turret. I'm starting with the man in the missile turret. Yeah, we're just going full macro here. Keep in mind that there's still tactical nuke available for Terran. So you might be able to launch that at any given time. And Clem has now started building a whole load of missile turrets in the middle of the map. We're gonna go for all of the luxury upgrades. We have the Observer speed, the Warp Prism speed, we have the Medevac energy boost. We get a little bit of everything. Yeah, this game has now got, ooh, pretty good split. Especially through all of the neon violet squares here. Not bad at all. Maybe we need some static defense in this area too. Those Vikings kiting around. Yeah, Vikings are so powerful. Really? Weapon refit is researching. I have not seen Clem play Battlecruisers in a very long time. But here we go. Cattle Bruiser operational. Well then. Well then. I just want to remind you that this is a best of 9. And this is game 2. I may need to get more coffee at some point. I don't know. We'll see. Dark Shrine coming up as well for Zoun now. Who wants to try and see if we can get rid of those missile turrets. Those missile turrets are important to knock down because obviously they're going to be able to kill all of the interceptor ships and still provide a lot of support. So many Vikings available right now, you can actually one-shot the Colossi. This is effectively the StarCraft 2 equivalent of like 20 minutes no rush. Although obviously they've been fighting each other. It's not, I feel like it, you know, they've been trying, they've been meaning it. But it's not been that serious, you know. It's like, hey, here are a couple zealots. Right here, you can have a, you know, I'll kill a couple of your workers, you'll kill a couple of mine. Not really the most important stuff, but here we go, dude. Clem is finishing up the Yamato gun, and that means that indeed the mouth of the Battlecruiser opens. And we can go and launch some of those missiles. Zoun just constantly fishing here. Trying to see if we can get some damage done with the Nova. These are extremely exhaustive games, by the way, to play. Like, best of 9s, they can easily take 2 hours. Playing games where you're constantly forced to split, it's very action intense. Like, you cannot really look away from your army at any given moment. Another Colossus, though, and another Disruptor. Everything's dying. I feel like the Skytle's army has done very little. Yeah. Look at this. We have had 13 carriers, 6 Colossi, and 22 of those Phoenixes go down at this point in the game. Now, normally this would be a bit of an issue for Terran when Terran is going up against the sudden switch to full ground toss. But Battlecruisers are kind of amazing against ground toss, actually. It's just a difficult unit to get out. That's the main problem with Battlecruisers. Not that they're not good. They're just very expensive and they take a very long time to build. So not very often do you find yourself in a situation where it's actually the best choice. But Clem has already got a lot of money. He's only got 59 workers, actually, so using a lot of these mules as well, I'm sure, for mining. Ranged upgrade coming up for the Libs. 6 Battlecruisers, by the way. He's been hiding them. I don't think Zoun has seen the Battlecruisers yet. He's now going to continue fighting up north. Maybe denying this base over here is nice, but suddenly, big bada boom's coming up, and they're going to start, well, shooting missiles and everything they can hit. No way you're going to be able to really fight this here as Zoun. What do you do now, Zoun? Oh, Zoun responds by building 6 Tempests. 6 Tempests and about a dozen Dark Templar. There they go. Not all heroes wear capes. But their commanding officer does. And let's see if we can maybe get some work in. Oh, awkward. Little Zealot waiting. The Zealot is now meant for just seeing if there's any static defense. Well, I think, I think there's a good amount of static defense. Quite a few of those Battlecruisers home as well. Additional BCs coming. We have a second Ghost Academy now also on the production tab. So Clem, oh, there we go, has decided to start launching nukes and making Battlecruisers. Well, this is a spot that's quite tricky for the Protoss player to actually see.
Base is under attack.
Dark Templar in the meantime, though, have made their way towards that location. Tactical nuke does land. 70 probes end up going down. Dark Templar recall home. Luckily for them, there's no radiation. Building armor coming up for Clem. A couple seconds late for that. Would have liked to have it against those DTs. Novas being sent in from every side again, but I feel like every single main engagement we watch, Clem is just winning. Clem is just demolishing. Cost efficiency wise, this has been a major advantage for Terran. So Clem has an answer for this type of style too. Honestly, it's most impressive to me that he didn't even hesitate. He didn't even blink. He just thought about it and he's like, yo, this is what we do. We slow down the game, we make some additional command centers. And we start making Battlecruisers at the perfect moment. And we hide them. Like, it takes a long time. Rarely does it happen at the pro level that you can hide 6 Battlecruisers. That happens a lot in, like, the viewer-submitted games because players don't scout much. But obviously, if Zoun is paying attention to the map and he's being aggressive, generally, Clem will have to show him his army at some point just to, well, not lose the match. But Clem being able to actually save up 6 Battlecruisers and then suddenly reveal them all in one go is so powerful. EMP is going down here as well. And Zoun is just not really getting the ball rolling, man. DTs, though, coming around the back. Battlecruisers coming around the other back as well. Yamato guns are gonna land on every single one of those Protoss flyers in the Tempest. Well, at least a lot of them get blasted out of the skies. Well, this is an absolute massacre. An absolute bloodbath of Terran and Protoss. That was actually not as bad for Zoun as I thought it was gonna be. In the meantime, we have more of those Dark Templar going to town as well, detection or not. They will just slice up whatever they can hit. That was a bonkers engagement. Once you lose the BCs, I don't think you can really go back. I don't believe that Clem can continue building Battlecruisers right now because he needs units here. And he needs them, well, as quickly as possible. And BCs are just too expensive. He can't really afford that anymore. Meaning that Zoun could actually go back to playing Skytles in a very strange way. Problem is, though, for both, they don't really have a lot of money. They do not have any money. One thing that I am missing here, though, for Zoun, and I'm a little surprised we haven't even seen it, is Sonic Storm. Why do we not have Psy Storm? He's had money for the research, at least at many points in this game. He's just decided not to go in that direction, which is fair enough, but I really feel like having a couple of Storms in some of those engagements would be incredibly useful. Maybe 2 less Dark Templar? 2 more High Templar? Okay, maybe 6 less Dark Templar and 6 more High... But it would be an amazing addition to the Protoss army. Fantastic against Protoss, or against Terran's ground. Very good as well, obviously, against Terran air. Don't get me wrong, though. This is already a complex Protoss unit composition to control properly. But it would be a very obvious addition. Clem not really having such lacking in his army. I feel like Clem is kind of playing this army to its maximum potential. Problem here for Clem, though, is that he doesn't have a lot of cash. Yeah, losing those command centers and SCVs has been painful. Tactical nuke, once more, this time around, is going to be sent towards the gold base. Mostly just here as a distraction. Mostly just force the Terran player to be... Oh, careful now. Careful now, Mr. Zoun. Don't walk in the direction of your own nukes. Dark Templar, though, once more. Ooh, good Nova. Dark Templar once more being used as a core, well, damage dealer here. We rarely see them being used for anything other than backstabbing the opponent, but they've been very efficient. This Ghost, by the way, only got a handful of kills. Zoun now realizes where that nuke was, and he's gonna try and catch some of those units. This Expo is actually not very safe at all. Now, he can constantly go in and kill those command centers with relative ease. There's only really a bit of detection. In the meantime, you know what? Zoun is on the prowl again. No Storm, or... well, yes, Storm. We don't really seem to need it in this instance. Okay. We do have some of those liberation zones being set up. No reaction by Clem just yet. Nope, not fast enough. Recall immediately. Another command center is going to take its place. Fights will continue over here. Good splitting once more by Clem, trying to keep all of these units alive. Zoun once more, forced to back up. Oh, dude, those liberation zones are so big. So powerful here. Still, yeah, if you can just run around it, the Liberators can only really engage one side at a time. Dark Templar, Stalkers, Zealots, everything is going around the side, and Zoun is doing a good job avoiding the scariest parts of that army. Ooh. I'm actually liking this game way better for Zoun than I ever thought it was going to. I thought it was amazing initially, and then, you know, from like minute 12 or so until like minute 24, I didn't really like it too much for the Protoss. But now, I find myself starting to believe again. Now, obviously, the fact that command centers can fly and have energy to give you free mining is really good. Yeah. And I got a feeling that that will ultimately be what decides this game. Because Clem has had less workers than his opponent for a very long time. We're still like 1 Nova away, though, from this being amazing. Clem has now found that new base in the far bottom left that Zoun has just begun mining. Fights continue over here. A lot of distractions all around the map. And again, no reaction, though, by Zoun. He's gonna pay the price. To be fair, there's a lot of little notifications all over the map, right? And we see a nice little graphical thingy on the mini-map. Zoun does not see that. All Zoun has to look for is tactical nuke detected, right? Whatever that sounds like in Korean. And then he has to look for a tiny red dot all around his bases. And at this point, well, his bases are plentiful. Still, this is an engagement that has real potential now for the Protoss player. Terran reinforcements show up, but he's got those lips up on the low ground. Oh, he knows that there's no planetary in that location anymore. He saw that the orbital command got replaced. Do we still have any Dark Templar? Just the 2 of them. Ooh. If somehow, some way, Clem can actually deny this base, that would be massive. Zoundo going after the expansion now in the top right. He still has the Nexus in the bottom left. Maybe the probes have died in that area, but yeah, command center goes down in the top right. New workers have now begun mining here as well for Protoss. Yeah, nukes are not very commonly cost efficient in 2025, but they're very APM efficient. Especially when the game is very hectic, it's difficult for the opponent to look around actually catch the nuke. Last thing you want is that nuke, well, connecting with your army. It's happened a couple of times. Solar. Especially to Solar. Poor Solar. Solar has lost many, many Brute Lords to tactical nukes over the years. Anyway. Those Liberators are looking mighty powerful, guys. I think those Liberators, yep, are just a little bit too strong. GG gets called and Clem gets another win. Next up, we find ourselves on Whispers of Gold. This is the planet with all the spice. At the very least, I think this is where they recorded June. I'm not exactly sure. Arrakis? Is that what it's called? I think so. I read the first book a very long time ago. I have seen the movies. The movies are very good. I really enjoyed them. Anyway. Very normal builds once again, although, again, a bit of a greedy one from Clem. Clem not going for any scout. Not going for a Reaper. Not going for any unit other than the very first Marines after the reactor was built with a command center on the low ground. Zoun is letting him get away with this, but I'm starting to be, you know, I feel like at some point it just becomes so obvious, right? This is now the third game in a row that Clem has gone very greedy with his first couple of structures. Anyhow, Twilight Council here on the back of this for Zoun. So we should have the Blink. Cool build across the board for Zoun, but I kind of feel like he blew it when he first went across the map. And Clem just hit the Stimpack button and stood still. You kind of want Terran to panic. Because when Terran is standing still, even though Marines obviously fire very rapidly, you're always losing damage when you're moving them around. So Clem actually just, yeah, used Stimpack, attack moved, and stood still. It feels very counterintuitive, but it can be very useful. Did we accidentally make a couple Reapers? Alright, let's see. Still a good squad of units. No, I don't think it's accidentally. I think we're just actually making those late on purpose. Letting them arrive at the exact same time as those Marines. Ooh, good line of attack here once more. And this is starting to look all a little bit dicey for Protoss. Clem might just be one bridge too far. Yeah. 8 probes. Obviously, quite a few Terran units paid the price as well, but this is the type of stuff that makes any sort of follow-up from Protoss way easier to defend. So the follow-up here from Zoun is going to be Blink. If he was even considering going some sort of like 8-gate all-in, or, well, 8-gate, 4-gate. 8-gate on 2 bays would be insane. 4-gate all-in here on the back of this. It's just not going to hit nearly as hard. So this is a triple-gate start for Zoun. He is making a Prism right now, so he is planning on being aggressive. But I believe it will be relatively straightforward for Clem to clean all of that up. Now, it is relative. Still very easy to accidentally lose in a game of StarCraft 2, but here we go. Medevac drop. Heads into the main base. Unloads the units early. Bit aggressive here from Clem. Okay, good pickup though on that Widow Mine after it was already taking a bit of damage. He wants to burrow it, but it does go down. Good blink here. Keep in mind that Zoun now also has double blink available on his units. By picking them up with the Prism, and excellent control here by Protoss, although he is losing a few probes. Would love to see the workers micro towards the bottom. Okay. Lost one Stalker during all of that. Got a bunch of Marines, as well as that Widow Mine. Siege tank on the back of this. And he is set up right now to make sure that he does not take any critical damage from the Protoss whatsoever. We even have a Raven over here. Raven is very useful for supplemental damage. If somehow, some way, there would be a, I don't know, a Dark Templar follow-up or something along those lines, or an Observer getting a little overly ambitious, you would still have that defended too. Still though, Clem is exposed with his tech labs. My mom always told me never expose your tech lab, but Clem apparently did not hear that same story. French people. Anyway, it is a little risky here. It doesn't mean that any sort of follow-up attack from Clem is going to just hit later. It's going to be difficult for him to do so, but he doesn't really need to be aggressive, judging by the timing. Ooh, good snipe here as well by Zoun. Actually, his blink control is just very solid across the board. I actually don't think that Zoun is playing a poor series. Like, this is not Zoun just getting overwhelmed. It just seems that Clem is playing ever so slightly better. But this is the type of setup where I do think Zoun could certainly bring it back. Momentum is most definitely now in Clem's favor. Clem doesn't really need to be aggressive here anytime soon. He will be able to get Stimpack Combat Shields +1 eventually. Dart Command Center, though, is now 2/3 of the way done, and we'll probably see Terran try to move out. Take that expansion on the low ground as soon as the CC is finished. For now, the CC, not yet done. I CC, no CC. Well, I mean, it's right there. Okay. Colossus. Charge. Dart base here for Zoun. Zoun has also parked his army on the other side of the map just to try and be a nuisance. Maybe he can intercept some army, and he knows that Terran is going to be heading down to the low ground, so that's exactly what we see right now. Salvage on the bunkers. Clem is ready to go down to the low ground. I don't think there's enough Protoss to really do anything about this. I don't even think it's enough to slow down the command center. Nope. Orbital. There we go. And now indeed Stimpack is done. So, once more, well managed here by Clem. And how do you stop the man now, right? Like, what do you do at this point as a Protoss player to try and grab the reins of this game again? This is by no means game over for Zoun, but we have just seen Clem in this exact scenario about 1,000,000 times. And unless he takes like a terrible fight, or he has like a disruptor that hits him in the face, or I guess technically like a zealot run by. But I really feel like Clem is the near perfect player in this type of scenario where he just doesn't really lose. Look at the timing here. That Marine Scout, flawless. It's as good as it was ever going to be. That guy has been walking for like a minute. He's gonna run back home like he needs to tell the news to the other Terran units. But Clem is extremely solid from this perspective, right? So if you look at the supply count right now, it's just gonna get crazier and crazier over time. We already have like a 50% increase. Or discrepancy, I guess, between the two. Maybe not quite 50, but it's a significant enough difference. And these are proper Terran units too. Now, does Clem need to be aggressive? Nope. He can just keep building. And this is one of those setups that can be, like, you have this in older matchups of StarCraft 2, but you can kind of feel the slow death animation if you play against this sort of thing. Like, you know you're behind, and you were behind from the very first push, but then, you know, they don't kill you. They just kind of sit there and they're playing with their food. Well, maybe this is the engagement Zoun was hoping for. I don't think so, though. Now a 50 supply lead for Clem. He's going into ghosts. He's making all the right plays. Goes into the 2-2 immediately upon finishing the +1 armor, after already finishing up the +1 earlier today. And Clem has decided that he is allowing 3 bases, but not 4. Well, let's see, Zoun. Can you keep this Nexus alive? He's already evacuating it. It is absolutely essential as Protoss to play a good early game, because if you don't, you find yourself in this spot. Now, the Terran army will have some difficulty going back home. The Nexus has already been killed. Don't miss really the tanks. Ooh, okay. Clem also caught that really quickly. Left one Marine behind just to see. There is another Nexus building now, and Clem has seemingly managed to, okay, catch some of those units. Anti-armor missile, though. Did connect with the rest of the ground army for Protoss, and that is going to force Zoun to go back home. When your Colossus is covered in Dorito dust, it's time to go home? What? Lowko, you can't say that. Anyways, you do want to disengage is what I'm saying. You really don't want to be fighting when you have the deficit and you don't also like, no, it's not going to happen. +2 coming up. Zealot run by all the way up north. Another command center is building right now for Clem. I think Clem is going to try and tighten the noose as soon as 2-2 is finished, which is only really a few seconds away right now. Keep in mind, though, that with a Nova, this can still be brought back, right? Purification Nova is absolutely essential. Oh, he blinked underneath. Once more, the Colossus is covered in Dorito dust! Dust! Dorito dust! Counter-Strike players getting excited now. Clem 10 seconds away from the upgrades. He wants to see if he can fight right when they're done. But... yeah, I think he's okay. Yep. Perfect. Perfect game here by Clem. I mean, as perfect as a game like this is ever going to be. This is extremely dominant behavior by Clem. And also a very frustrating one for Zoun when you're playing against it. Because this game, he's just never gotten the ball going. Now, this is where Terran players still sometimes throw it, though. But I think you have to do it with a Disruptor. Like, the only way you can really lose this properly as Terran... I mean, there's a lot of ways. But the only reliable way, I guess, is if suddenly one Nova, big bada boom, Protoss counterattacks you, you just can't stop the floodgates. Right? Like, that's... or the floodgates, the flood itself. You don't want to be opening the floodgates. AKA, you know, take a big Nova to the face. That Raven was made, by the way, just to kill an Observer earlier and just to be safe against a Blink upgrade. That Raven is still putting in the work. Clem always keeping it around, seemingly on a separate control group too. We'll probably see Terran, if he feels like he needs to, deviate again to Liberators. Expansion up north, now being taken. This is the 5th Nexus of Zoun. 5th Command Center here for Clem. Yeah, this entire series, or this entire game here, is mostly just Clem showing us why he's considered to be the greatest player. At the moment. Maybe Cyril. Maybe Cyril. But, you know, Clem really is one of the very best players on the planet. Maybe this fight, though, is a bit of an overextension? Huh? Okay, maybe I spoke too soon. Clem coming in clutch, but Zoun suddenly showed up with units in multiple areas at once. Sent a lot of the troops around. Still behind in the supply count. That was as good a fight as Zoun was ever going to find, though. It's a very flimsy army. I would love to see that Liberator number climb up. Get the ranged upgrade for them and just go from there. That's one way to dodge. Lands them back on the ground again. Reinforcing Terran units have shown up. (3-3) now finishing up as well for the bio units. Zoun has not started an upgrade in a while. Yeah. Clem getting a little ahead of himself, maybe. But he also knows that this is an extremely dire scenario for Zoun. Like, he knows that Zoun is not going to have much of a... of an economy on the back of this, although it's not like he is particularly rich either. Nova's still useful though, but so is that Liberation Zone, forcing the Stalkers to blink in a position where they would rather not go. Props to Zoun though, I kind of felt like he was dead like 5 minutes ago, but still hanging in there, still creating opportunities for himself. I feel like that's been a bit of a theme so far in this series. He's hanging in. He's you know, he's doing okay, but he's missing a couple percentage points here and there. So Zoun has decided to just spend all of his money now on unit production alone. He knows that he can only ever win this with an army. He can't really get his upgrades going. He can't really transition into anything else. Skytoss, Storm, all of it is off the beaten path. He can just not afford getting that time here. He just doesn't have it. He's struggling against half of the Terran army. The other half is currently on the other side of the map, killing a Nexus, sniping 12 additional workers. And while this counterattack here from Zoun looks reasonably promising, it was also, for all intents and purposes, his final hurrah here. A Hail Mary play to try and bring it home. The rest of the Marines and the Marauders, though, starting to snipe this man. Those Disruptors have been a thorn in his side, though. Those Disruptors so frustrating. GG ultimately gets cold. Clem does get the job done, but I think Zoun probably expected he was dead like 10 minutes ago. Still hung in there, but never brought it back. He's too good. He's too fast. He's too handsome. His micro is too strong. His macro is too crisp. His game senses are perfect. What do you do? What do you do to stop Clem? Well, Clem is apparently thinking maybe there's a proxy gateway on the other side of the map somewhere. Because I have been very greedy these last couple games, but nope, Zoun not reacting to any of it. Okay, well, Zoun is an experienced player, but this is now starting to look a little bit like a 5-0. Now, we're not quite in that situation yet, but this is one of those spots where you can feel extremely demoralized. Because Zoun now effectively needs to win like 5 games in a row, right? Like, how? Nobody wins 5 games in a row against Clem. So you have to keep your spirits up. I mean, he's got a bit of wiggle room, but you have to keep your spirits up. In straight up games, it seems like Clem just simply has the edge. Oh, okay. We're canceling the Stargate, and then we go Twilight Council instead. Huh. Curious. So it's a Sentry First build, by the way. I always like the Sentry First builds. First time we see Zoun going for it, and he does have some sort of trick up his sleeve. Robo Facility on the back it is. Now, Clem will likely be building yeah, exactly, the Cyclone count up at this point. Cyclone's very good against this sort of start when you expect it is indeed going to be a Stargate build. Instead, Clem decides to, or Zoun rather, decides to cancel the Stargate and go into Blink. This does mean that the Blink is going to be delayed. But it will be difficult for Clem to scout any sort of follow-up transition, so he showed the Stargate, killed the Reaper immediately, cancelled the Stargate, started up the Blink research in the Twilight Council instead. It does mean that Blink is going to hit like maybe 20 seconds later than it ordinarily would, but we're gonna go into 4 gates. You know what? I did point out in the previous games that his Blink Stalker looked, like his Blink Stalker micro looked really good. So if he can just make a lot of Blink Stalkers and just rely on those units, use the Prism and the Stalkers to his advantage. The only caveat there is that Clem plays against max specs, day in and day out. They play multiple series every week. And I would consider max specs' Blink Stalker control to be the absolute best in the world. There's a reason why we don't really see max specs doing 4-gate Blink Stalker anymore. And it's because Clem has been holding it quite reliably, most of the time. Well, this is not quite him expecting it, though. So at this point, yeah, there's no siege tanks out yet. And I think the trick is working out quite well here. Oh, we're not even building it. I thought for a second we were going to make the transition. Clem is making the assumption here that this is similar to the previous Phoenix build that we've seen, where Zoun saved them up for donkeys before he finally showed them up. He's even thinking about going across the map right now. Oh, no. Clem, this is not the time to go across. Does he see this? He does not. This is a real opportunity here for Zoun. Yeah, I think this is as good as it's ever going to be. This is not at all what Clem was expecting. Clem was waiting for, like, I don't know, like maybe a charge follow-up after some Blinky boys. Or, sorry, after some Phoenix boys. Blinky boys, though, go after one of those Medivacs, catches the one with all of the units inside of it still, too. It's a bit overly aggressive here by Zoun, if I'm being perfectly honest. But this is a really good beginning to the fight. 6 Stalkers have gone down, though. I think he's feeling a bit itchy. We need to bring that Prism a bit closer so we can pick up the weakened units. There we go. Never a good sign, though, when Terran has to use all of their SCVs here for, well, tanking the damage. Yeah, good setup here for Zoun. He's built a 3rd Nexus in the meantime, but you know what? Maybe most importantly here, despite the fact that Clem had no idea what was going on, he's still, like, his crisis management is still solid. It's just hard to say if he's got the right units. You really are supposed to have siege tanks and that sort of thing. So it's kind of ironic that in the first game that Clem properly scouts, he pays the price for it. Like, it's the first time he does a good old normal Reaper Scout opener. Yeah, GG. He responds to the information he's seen, and then he loses because of it. Alrighty, next up, we find ourselves on Ultra Love. Sorry, that seemed necessary. It's once more a good old, well, Sentry First build. It worked in the previous game. Why not again? There's also a map, though, where you do have 2 ramps. One from the main to the low ground, and then one from the natural right here as well to the low. And so it's a relatively easy map to defend on. Ooh, we're gonna fake an Oracle. This is too early, though, for it to be a real Oracle. No way Clem is gonna panic against that. That is like 30 seconds too soon. He's still gonna respect it. Yeah, you never know. Maybe this is some wonky Protoss, but you also know it's been a Sentry First. So this should never be real. But hey, the missile is very real, and the SCV damage is too. Well, let's see. What can we do right here on Ultra Love? Cute play by Zoun. You love to see it. Generally, though, the first Oracle wouldn't arrive until, like, maybe right now, at soonest. At earliest. But maybe, you know what? Maybe that means that Zoun has kind of found his groove again, right? The previous game was actually not the cleanest, but he got the job done, and at least it's not a 4-0. He's starting to feel a little bit stylish again. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna go into the good old research again. We'll continue onwards with the same game plan. Maybe Sentry First is the way to go. Yeah, so Widow Mines deal friendly fire to units caught in its splash radius. So the hallucination is obviously not real. That's kind of a key with any sort of hallucination. Generally not real. But the Widow Mine hit certainly is. Lucky though here for Clem, he had a bit of HP left over. And not really a whole lot of follow-up possible here for Zoun. But it is very tempting now to try and get into the main base and maybe see if you can get some of those Stalkers behind that mineral line, because a lot of those SCVs are still low. Templar Archives on the back of this too. A lot of Protoss players, by the way, lately have been favoring Quick Storm. We are now 5 games into this series. We haven't seen Storm a single time. Just pointing it out. Why have we not? Okay, Stimpack, Combat Shields, +1. Charge again. And we are gonna see. Lo and behold! There it is. Good old Psionic Storm. We haven't actually seen it yet in any of the games, right? Trying to remember the previous games. I mean, we've been in this series for like it's been like an hour. No, we haven't seen Storm. Right? Maybe? Nah, I don't think so. No, we haven't seen any. I think so. 98% sure we haven't. Which is a bit weird, because a lot of Protoss players have been really loving this upgrade. Zoun, definitely somebody who does his own thing, you know? He doesn't necessarily copy other people's homework. He didn't ask ChatGPT for a build order. He's been trying to figure out his own thing. I tried it, by the way. AI build orders, absolute garbage. Most of AI things are... Ooh, nice snipe. Most of the AI things are questionable at best, but the StarCraft build orders it generates, not very good. Now, even though a medevac ended up going down... Ooh, the weather forecast said it was going to be stormy and only a single probe dice. Apparently today is the day of once. 1 probe, 1 pylon, 1 widow mine, 1 medevac, 1, and then 11 marines. Anyways. About a year ago, I asked ChatGPT to generate a build order for me, and it recommended me to go 9 spawning pool, 12 spawning pool, 14 over pool. It suggested I basically build about 7 spawning pools within the first 2 minutes. I mean, you could try. But I think it misunderstood what, like, a 12 pool meant. I'm not exactly sure. Then again, it's been making progress. A 12 pool usually means 12 spawning pools, right? One Zealot going down, but the Storms once more. Very useful. I feel like Zoun is kind of moving around the battlefield a lot more confidently. I don't want to, like, read into this too much. But when players are, like, 4-0 behind in a series, they feel sad. When you look at their army movement, you can see that they're not feeling it anymore. This is Zoun having a little bit of swagger in his step with his units, you know? Like, he's cruising along, having a good time, positioning his army confidently. Not really too afraid of hitting Clem in the face. And it's the only way you can win. Like, you can't really be playing this game too scared. You have to take risks. That's the thing about StarCraft. You have to always be taking risks. Because without taking any risk, you're not going to achieve much. It's always calculated aggression. Because you always have to make decisions to go across the map with limited info. If you try to be safe against everything, you end up losing against, well, a lot of stuff as well. Which is kind of ironic. But if you try to be crossing every single T, dotting every single I, you try to be safe against everything, you usually fall behind in straight macro. So if the opponent just cuts a few corners at that point, you are also behind. So it's always a difficult decision to make. If you feel like you can heavily outplay your opponent, maybe playing overly safe is indeed an approach. And that's something we do see from time to time. But I don't think Clem really feels like he could heavily outplay Zoun. And I definitely don't think Zoun could heavily outplay Clem. Storm? He's baiting the storm. Yeah. There it is. Gotta say, though, I really do like the Sentry into Storm builds. It's really fun. It's really strong as well. Oh, good EMP. That's obviously one of the reasons why that sort of build is difficult to pull off. As soon as Terran gets up to 3 bases, they will be, well, getting those ghosts out on the battlefield. And maybe Zoun is scared of ghosts. Maybe he checks every night. Under his bed. Make sure that there's no Nova under his bed. I mean, that would be terrible. Imagine you look under your bed and suddenly there's Nova. You wouldn't want that. But maybe, you know, maybe it's a different kind of ghost. It's these ones over here. The ones that, you know, have big rifles and... the ones that shoot EMPs. Electromagnetic pulse? I think that's it. The ability that goes bzzzt. Well, you can always storm preemptively like that, but ultimately this Terran army needs to actually be addressed. Zoun has been trying to set up a good engagement. He does have every source of splash damage now, by the way. We have Archons, we have Colossi. We don't have Disruptors yet, I suppose, but we have some difficult and complex Protoss unit compositions. And if anything, I feel like that already makes High Templar worth it. Because, yeah, Ghosts are really good answers to try and fight the High Templar and to fight the Protoss army in general. But also, it's something you need to be extremely careful with. You can't be giving away units like that, Zoun. Was a High Templar just a second ago? Yeah, maybe this is still a very winnable spot for him. But Terran also needs to be concerned about, well, not letting their army slip from their fingers too far, right? Because if you take one storm to the face, it's pretty much immediately the end of the force. It's super easy to make a mistake when you do know that there's those High Templar out there. And this is an excellent cleanup by Zoun. Still though, reinforcing Terran units have now shown up. Zoun has got a High Templar coming in from the side. We do have 2 storms, I think. No, just an energy short when I selected it. Literally at 74 energy. Needed 75. And it's pretty evident to me that Clem prefers playing against Disruptors. If he has any say in the matter, I think he prefers playing against Disruptors than playing against High Templar. This army for Protoss is looking mighty strong. How many Templar are there? Just the 3, which is not a ton. Just the 1 Colossus as well, by the way. He's getting a second Robo right now and another Colossus out. One thing that Zoun hasn't really been doing much in this game, and really in this series, other than on Neon Violet, but he hasn't been going for a lot of run-bys. He went for a lot of Dark Templar run-bys, but very few Zealot run-bys, which is quite curious. I've seen, for example, MaxPax does a ton of Zealot run-bys. We're sending a bunch of them in, but this is quite, you know, this is not that much. Trying to hit whatever, blinking away as soon as those Widow Mines are ready to fire. So here's Barracks 6, 7, and 8 right now finishing up for Clem. He's going to be able to start pumping out a ton of those Ghosts and Marauders. Second starport coming up too. So ultimately the goal here for Clem is the same as it has been in the previous matches. He wants to go into that Liberator army. Difficult though to make that transition right now when you're constantly fighting Protoss and you're trying to get him away from your front door. Building the fusion core and the ranged upgrade and the second starport and actually beginning the production of libs. Not easily done. Zealot run by now is finally committed, and you know what? He may have found an opportunity. Zoun just baiting his opponent's army away, and then in the meantime, while he's trying to drag that army back home, he's thinking about engaging the planetary, but he sees the Terran army. Oh, one of the Medivects goes down. He sees the Terran army from the corner of his Archon. I think that was the unit leading towards the left side of the fight here. Some good EMPs once more, though, by Clem. And he is going to finish up the +2 here as well for the infantry armor. Okay. So we're going to continue this dance. Clem now in a very different position than what he was in the previous games. Forced to play a lot more defensively this time around. Still though, he's doing a great job in that department too. Maybe a bit overextended right there with the Vikings, but he is now pushing all of those Protoss units away. Disruptors are coming up once more, by the way. Expertly managed here by Clem, who's now moving across the map. He hasn't had a lot of time to really heal up his units. He's only got a handful of Medivacs as well. Honestly, I feel like you need to chill for a little bit, dude. Those stims are going to be very costly. Knocking down the cooling tower. Probably not a bad idea for Zoun, but Zoun is like, yo, let me fight. I don't want to give you any time to try and regenerate your army. You're like one storm away from death. And that's a pretty good one. Medivacs are out of energy, by the way. We do have 9 Medivacs now, so he's using those additional... Oh, that additional starport really nicely. Protoss is now the one trying to chase all of this away from home again. Disruptor's obviously just on a cooldown, so EMP is not as powerful a choice against it. Dark Templar indeed on the back of this. 3-3, by the way, coming up for both players as well, so none of them slacking in that department. Zoun has been taking more and more expansions all around the map. Clem is going to have a very difficult time taking a 5th, and he's going to need one in the near future. Another Nova does connect on a bunch of those Marauders. Yeah, I think having vision over here is critical. He also needs to get some sort of vision over on that other base at the 9 o'clock position, because that would be the secondary choice for Clem as far as the 5th base goes. Zoundo, in the meantime, has been taking those other bases, right? So he's going to be able to continue mining and find a home for his probes. Ooh. Nova's coming up. Zealot run by in the meantime gets intercepted as well. Another Nova does connect over there with that bio army. Ultimately, Zoun is going to be forced to retreat. Loses a few of those sentries as well. Good dodge there by Clem. Not having another Nova connect. That army is going to try and see if it can chase down the Protoss all the way over to the 5th. It looks like Clem does manage to complete the job here. But again, he has not been able to really start up that Liberator transition. Look at the money as well that he's got. He just doesn't have that much stuff. Does force a full cancel right there on that warp in as the pylon ended up going down. Maybe going after the Nexus itself is better. Maybe recalling the probes would also not be a bad idea here for Zoun. He has that Nexus all the way on the other side. Either way, Zoun feels like he can probably get away with this as he decides to flank this with the High Templar and Storm. And this is an incredible engagement for Zoun. Clem realizes that he is just about to lose his entire army. Zoun actually went back into the game to finish that fight. Whew, beautiful flank by Zoun. He gets the job done. Next up, we find ourselves on ley lines. Suddenly, we've got ourselves a series. Not that long ago, I was talking about a 5-0. Well, this is the 6th map in the series, and the scoreboard is looking way better right here for Zoun. We're gonna go into the good old Blinky boys again. Clem not bothering with any sort of vision out on the map. I mean, he checked over here and he checked over there, but that's it. That's the only scouting we do. When players get better, they scout less. Weird how that works. Clem feels like he can defend against anything if he doesn't scout. And in the previous games, I mean, on El Dorado, for example, he did scout. And then he immediately got played because of the scouting information that he got. So maybe it's better if you just don't scout every single time. Maybe not so much as a ladder hero, but I think in tournament games it can be very beneficial if you try to squeeze out those very small advantages. Broadly though, there's only really two builds that Protoss plays. Either you go for the blink, or you go into guess what? Stargate. This is not really a Stargate type of thing. Most Protoss players like to go blink 4 out of 5 games, I would say. So it is a relatively safe approach. Terrans will generally go for a combination of a little bit of everything. Terran early game has a lot of variety, but ultimately all of the roads do lead towards bio. Especially if you're Clem. Like him playing Battlecruisers earlier on in this series, quite unique. We don't really see him do that sort of thing very often at all. He's very much so an infantryman. And you can't blame him. I wish the Terran mech was more viable. It's never really been particularly viable against Protoss. There have been a few small, like short instances where it was kind of overpowered, especially with like battle mech and stuff, but we rarely see it. I wish it was a viable strat, but not the case, and even if it was, Clem still loves this style. Let's see. It's a Marine push together with a triple medevac, or a triple Widowmine inside of the medevac, rather. First one, detonated perfectly. What about the other two in the main? Zoun doesn't know how many there truly are. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Clem being such a pain in the butt with this sort of thing. Ugh. So much lost mining time. So much lost mining time. Ay, ay, ay. Clem is a bully. Well, hey, that blink was flawless. And he does finish the job, but if he did not quite notice the medevac slipping away, there is a chance. I think he knows. He doesn't see it. If it's all the way in the corner, the stalkers can't actually see it, but there is a chance that that medevac will still come in, drop down to third, and then still blow up your mineral line. Okay, if we look at the workers, yeah, mining here, the income advantage. This dip over here is obviously because those probes were just chilling in the gas geyser. Clem getting a nice boost in that regard, and you can immediately see that reflected here in the worker count too. He's going into the Stimpaks. We'll see the combat shields, the +1 infantry attacks. The holy trinity of Terran upgrades. This is what Terran players, they pray for, I believe. For the Stimpak, the combat shields, and the +1 infantry weapons, amen. And I love it. It's a strong combination of units. And something that pretty much always lines up naturally. Like, as long as you start them up in close proximity to one another, which sounds very obvious, right? But you can kind of... Every Protoss, or every Terran build rather, pretty much always nails the timing of all of those things. And it's lovely. It's very strong. Nice thing is, you don't even need to be aggressive with it. Like, yeah, you hit a big power spike, but also not really that important. Now, again, this is the spawn location where Terran does have their add-ons exposed. This is that little bit of randomness that we have in StarCraft 2. You never actually... You cannot manually adjust where your tech labs appear. So imagine if Clem spawned on the other side of the map. Those tech labs of him, well, of his, would have been facing towards his command center, right? In this particular instance, the add-ons are relatively exposed. It would be favorable for Clem to be spawned on the other side of the map, but... we'll see. RoboBay coming up. Charge just about to finish. Pretty quick charge, actually. Very useful. Okay. And it looks like we are indeed ready to go across the map. Big skill check here for Clem. This is because that Widowmine drop dealt a bunch of damage. Suddenly, these type of attacks that are normally relatively easy to hold for Protoss can actually be game-ending. Still though, Clem needs to make the decision to actually ride all the way across the map, and he doesn't really know how many charge slots there's going to be. If you have the Terrans, well, siege tanks, for example, suddenly get charged at by zealots that come around the back. The counter for Protoss can be very, very powerful. But if you were, like, say, for example, this would be an early round in a tournament, and you're like, I don't know, a low Grandmaster Protoss player, you know? Somebody very low level. at least compared to Clem. He would just be attacking right now, and you would probably lose. Lucky here for Zoun, though, he manages to escape. And he was fully prepared against it. He's now decided to spend some of that Zealot money onto a Nexus. Clem is now, yeah, he's seen it, so he's gonna try and send some of those units up north. He's recognizing that this is indeed quite greedy. Few Zealots for the counterattack, but we have a bunker here preventing it. Mostly just here to be a nuisance. This is still a good Protoss army, though, but where's the Zealots? We have 10 Zealots. There's just a few over here. Love that, anti-armor missile. And that's gonna be the end of that Nexus. Zoun knows that it's time to retreat. And again, this is reminding me of those earlier games we've seen. It's not like Zoun is playing poorly here. It's just that his early game has been cool. It's been a little slippery, right? And then suddenly you look at the game a couple minutes later and he's 30 supply behind. This is one of the big downsides of playing Protoss in this matchup. If you don't have a really clean early game, you're behind. Now, that is the case for basically every StarCraft 2 matchup under the sun. But against the very best players in the world, when you fall behind in one of those very volatile early game scenarios, you just can't find your way back in. And Zoun is going to try. Like, we saw him try that earlier with, like, Mass Disruptor play, and he managed to get some really good engagements going across the board, and he almost brought it back. But ultimately, Clem was just in firm control. It very much so is going to require a big mistake from Clem to be able to get back into the swing of things at this point. But Clem doesn't seem to be in a hurry, so that does mean that Zoun gets to build up a very complex army composition of his own. A lot of Protoss players, well, they prefer playing that sort of army, other than just Zealots and Stalkers. And obviously, it does mean that Clem is going to have to... He needs to be concerned about, well, Zealot Stalkers, but also about potential Storm, Colossus transitions, Disruptors, all the rest of it. And generally, at least a few of those things all at the same time. These late game unit compositions for Protoss are all very tricky to deal with. And here we go. This is exactly the type of army that Terran nightmares are made of. What can we do with it? Good beginning to a fight. Gets 2 of the Vikings. Nice targeting there by Zoun. Sending in 1 Zealot on the counterattack, mostly just for scouting. But he can actually deal some damage there too if it decides to move forward. Zoun wants to try and keep this Terran player off his lawn using Disruptors. Clem very Marauder heavy, by the way, at this phase in the game. He's all the way up to 20 Marauders. Pretty good against Disruptors, pretty good against Colossi. Yeah, he's building up 4 command centers. Ay, ay, ay. Dude, we are in for a long game again. At least if it's up to Clem. If I don't have a voice tomorrow, I think we know what happened. Let's see. This is a good engagement, though. Oh, big EMP. I was going to say it's a good engagement for Zoun, but he just lost half of his Protoss army with 1 EMP. At least as far as the HP count goes. In the meantime, we do have a Raven drop as well up north, trying to be a nuisance. Colossi are being targeted down now by all of those Vikings, and that's another one going down, and another one bites the dust. And another Colossus goes, and another Colossus... Yeah. Again, in an isolation, that was not a terrible fight for Zoun. I don't hate it. It's just that it feels like there's no way back into the game for him, right? Like, unless Terran makes a mistake, which Clem doesn't really do, it feels very difficult. And this is all... You can all trace this back to the Widowmine drop. Not so much Clem playing with his food, but it is a risky one. Well, the Liberators are coming in right now, and they're actually, they're trying their best to get a good engagement in. Zoun once more. He sees these opportunities. Zoun's actually very good at spotting those opportunities for him to potentially go in. You know what? This is not looking bad, actually, for the Protoss player early. He decides to blink after all of this aggressively. EMP once more, keeping that Protoss player honest. Novas are dangerous, but in the meantime, the Zealots and the Stalkers are plowing through whatever they can now pick up that just spawned out of those barracks. You know what? Maybe Clem has gotten a little bit overly confident. He was building so many command centers, trying to make that mass liberator transition, but he overextended. Maybe he overestimated his spot in that game, but, well, Zoun looked for an opportunity about 17 times. Didn't see anything the first 16 times. But apparently, when he tried again, Clem, well, he was caught off guard. Well then, we find ourselves on Frostline. The score is evened up. And we can start to see the beginning of what I would like to call the derpening. Yeah. This is one of the big problems during these long series. Margin for error in StarCraft 2 is always tiny. But when you start playing these very late game unit compositions, the puzzle becomes very complex. And when you've already been at it for, well, I don't know exactly how long it's been, but you've already been playing for a good long while. Sometimes the Ooga Booga can catch you off guard. And nothing's more Ooga Booga than Stalkers and Zealots. And maybe a couple Disruptors in the mix. Ooga Booga Protoss strategies are always powerful, dude. We're gonna go into something a little bit more delicate, though. We're gonna try and build up the good old Phoenixes again. Clem can't see it. He wants to check, and he's hoping that maybe he can get just barely a bit of vision of, well, whatever is built on the other side of the pylon. I think Clem, though, is kind of... Yeah, he's probably not too pleased with how that previous game worked out, mostly because he had so many opportunities to try and finish the game, right? Like, it's all a chance, like, you're all taking risks. But, for example, when he first finished up Stimpack Combat Shields +1, perfect attacking opportunity for him. Right, remember he moved out with a couple siege tanks at that point, and he's like, I see charge, I'm gonna go back home. I think in hindsight, he probably wishes he went for that attack. I'm still liking Clem's overall gameplay a little bit better, but there's no denying that Zoun is playing very strong. Hey, you scouted it. Good job. You're dead. Oh my god. I feel like that unit just got bigger when it died. That's crazy, dude. Maybe it was just a camera angle. Well, here go the Phoenixes. We do have a Cyclone out. Second Cyclone? Is there a second Cyclone? No, that's a siege tank inside of the medevac. Dangerous move out here from Clem, but it looks like he's managed to get across the map without actually being spotted. Barely threading the needle somehow. That siege tank. It can be lifted, but he's going to have to lift it as well. Robo facility here at the front. Pylon is going to get shut down. This is painful here for Zoun. He needs to lay this... I need to shut this down ASAP. Is there enough for the Protoss player to actually get rid of all of those Terran units? Well, the probes are going to be pulled away from their mineral line too to try and just soak up a bit of damage and to try and keep all of this going. And it looks like there is just barely enough. Siege tank is going to land once more. Reinforcing Terran units do show up. Yeah, and this is now two players mostly just throwing whatever they have at each other. Here's a Cyclone. I've got a few Adepts. I've got a remote control. I have the kitchen sink. We can just throw whatever we have. Let's hope that something works out. Yeah, this is a classic example of the derpening setting in. We don't play a lot of best of 9s in StarCraft 2. Best of 9 is actually quite uncommon. You know, like whenever you watch, like... I'm gonna give an actual sports analogy. This is crazy. You know when you watch a match of football? Normally, a game takes 90 minutes. Sometimes you get an extension, right? And you can see that everybody's kind of dying on the field. They're not having a good time. They've clearly trained for a very long time to be good at 90 minutes of football. But as soon as the game goes longer, well, you can see that everybody's struggling a ton. This seems similar to me. Everybody in StarCraft 2 is practiced for, at most, a best of 7. At least tournament players are. Generally, they play best of 5s. For online cups, generally the best of 5 is the recognized format. Best of 7s are more common now than they used to be, but best of 9s still rare. And it's a lot of focus. It is very much so mental stamina. I don't really have a better way to describe it other than that. The difficulty is certainly there. You need to keep your focus in the game for such a long time, and it's not easily done. Well, Clem is still out on the map. He's still just sending everything he's got across. Can we lift? I don't really love this here for Clem, man. I mean, he's got a good number of units, but an Immortal is starting to really hurt. Oh my god. Careful now. Zoun thinking about being the aggressor now. They're taking turns. Both of them want to be a punching bag, apparently. Careful, though. That siege tank is strong. Oh, Phoenix coming in. You lifted the wrong target, buddy, but I guess it's okay. He's going to be able to kill the siege tank anyway with that Immortal. And now apparently it's Zoun indeed who is going to try and send everything that he's got towards the other side of the map. Marines getting intercepted. Vikings land on the ground. SCVs pulled across. We're juggling landed Vikings like they're stalkers in a prism using the medevac here. And you know what? It's working out quite well. Keep in mind that Immortals obviously have a very, very slow rate of fire. So those SCVs indeed saved the day. Look at this. This is nutty. Both players losing a pretty similar amount of resources. I like this position better though for Zoun. Mostly because he's got the third base up and running. There is a third command center about 80% of the way done. And ultimately, we are arriving at the Holy Trinity. Stimpack, combat shields, and +1 infantry weapons. Ultimately, we are making our way into what seems to be Stalkers and Colossi. Whew, not bad at all. I don't think Clem is going to go across the map again, is he? Nah, I think we're using this army to secure the third CC now. We do need to start up some upgrades, though. This Twilight Council, okay, pretty late. He decides to go into the charge upgrade first, can't blame him. But he does need this upgrade right now, preferably. He needs to buy a bit of time. Ranged is coming up, though, for the Colossus, and that upgrade at the very least is nearly done. Can we get some Chronos down? Yeah, he has been chronoing. We have a bunch of energy dough on the next eye, and I do believe that it's not a bad idea to get those upgrades done sooner rather than later. Zoun's not concerned. Zoun actually playing a really good series. You'll love to see it. Playing different builds as well than what a lot of Terran players are used to facing. He's been doing it against Terran. He's been doing it against Zerg. Certainly a man you want to keep an eye out for, because again, he's only really been back for like maybe 5-6 months at this point. Okay. Robo facility goes down. Yeah. Risky though. Pays the price with a bunch of Marines. A couple Marauders. Good splitty right there on that Phoenix. Ooh, smooth. Still no charge, by the way. Nearly 10 minutes into the game. Charge is finally finishing up. He's still pumping out those Phoenixes. How many Marauders do we have? 11. I do believe that maybe Zoun needs to be a bit more cautious. A lot of the Protoss units, or a lot of the Terran units rather, are bruised. Good force field. Ooh, grabs a bunch of the units, but nice snatch there as well by Clem. Picks them up in the medevac, brings them back home to safety. Colossus sent forward to pop that force field. Wanted to do a bit of damage. He does have an observer up above. That one is giving him all the vision that he needs. Zoun sees the army, and he wants to be on the hunt. He feels like he's got the army to try and deal with this. Keep in mind, though, that he's also setting himself up for a sandwich at that point. Yep, again, SCVs coming in from both sides. Reinforcing Zealots show up as well. Is there enough for Protoss to overwhelm the Terran player right here, right now? Clem has a lot of troops. He's starting to break through all of these expensive Protoss units. Gets rid of the Immortal, gets rid of all the Colossus. And with it, well, only the Stalkers and this one Zealot. Or, sorry, only the Phoenixes and that one Zealot are what remain. Well, that ultimately was an expensive trade for Zoun. He kind of walked into that, and he knew he was walking into it. Maybe if the prism was out or something along those lines, those Zealots could get across the map ever so slightly quicker. But keep in mind, the Robo facility got sniped. Clem may have sacrificed a few Marines and Marauders to snipe that Robo, but it was also the reason why we didn't have a prism on the other side of the map. Very close. Very, very close. 17 SCVs in total, though. Nothing to be scoffed at. That is a significant amount of economy. Zoun now trying to see if we can secure a fourth. I think Clem knows what he needs to do. He started up 2-2, which is a bit expensive. But I think he still has the army to deny this 4th Nexus. Zoun, he needs to hold on to this. He needs this base. Oh, now you start wondering, maybe I shouldn't have gone into 2-2 immediately, because then I would have been able to secure the kill. Zoun actually has quite a bit of money in the bank. Needs to get the spending. There we go. Big warp in. Once more. Nice kiting here by the French Terran player. Starts up a 4th command center too, by the way, in the meantime. Ooh, bit of an overextension there. Bit of a misclick, it seems. Although he's going to be able to retreat to the high ground and snipe another Zealot on his way out. 4th command center about halfway done. Jimmy the Marine has been all army hotkeyed forward. Let's see. High Templar. Just for the Archon production for now. He would love to get Storm going. But Storm, again, expensive. And Zoun is once more pushed into a bit of a corner. He has the 4th Nexus up and running, though, at this point, which is critical. He also knows that he's killed a lot of SCVs on the other side of the map. Now, though, that investment that Clem made about a 2 minute or so ago, like, that's a big one. 2-2 is going to make those units significantly better. Good force field. Colossus, kind of mispositioned. Marauder, step forward. Does escape with the Colossus for now, but is there enough Protoss in general to keep this army at bay? Well, for now, this is an extremely close fight. It is a literal minefield out there, though, and we do have one of those Ghosts in the mix as well. Ghost is phenomenal with EMP against Archons, against the High Templar, against everything Protoss, and, well, against Zealot-based armies. It also shines. GG indeed gets gold. Okay, and that takes us to Amygdala. Match point here for Clem. After what? An hour and a half? Maybe even more than that. That previous game was still very high-level StarCraft, though. It's pretty clear that they are both quite tired, right? Like, strategically, it wasn't the most impressive game. But execution-wise, it was very clear that both players were still feeling it. Now, what's nice about it is if you play a lot of games, if you play a lot of StarCraft, at some point, your autopilot becomes very high-level too, right? And that previous game was mostly just 2 guys fighting using base game mechanics. And it turns out Clem was ever so slightly better when it comes to those base game mechanics, but I'm impressed with the way that Zoun is approaching this. We've seen it so many times that Koreans go off to the military, they come back, they try to get good at StarCraft again, but they never really get back to their previous level. Usually, the ones that do make it back, it seems like they take like a year. Maybe it sounds excessive, but if you're going up against, well, if you're doing any sort of competition and you're out of it for a full year, everybody else is playing, everybody else is practicing. Hard to make it back. Zoun, though, is going toe-to-toe here with Clem. I do think across the board, Clem is better. From what I've seen so far, he's just playing a more engaging style of Terran, right? And he's just slightly crisper with basically everything he does, but it's not far off. I'm impressed by Zoun. Let's see. It is once more the way we, by the way, started this series too. Once more Hellions and Reapers. I'm thinking about making the circle round again. Blink is coming up though, and he's not really breaking into the main base or the natural expansion particularly well yet. Okay, force field. Lovely force field. Not too early, not too late. Good positioning as well with the units. Now the rest of the Reapers are gonna try and join that that Hellion in the main base. Excellent. Excellent work here by the Protoss. Great force field there as well. Maybe it should have been like one little game hex to the north. But this is all you really are aiming for. Like, you're trying to not die, okay? With that particular attack, you're trying to minimize losses as Protoss. You just want to not lose half your mineral line. That's your main objective. And Zoun losing a single Stalker. Really taking the wind out of the sails here of Clem. I don't mind it at all. Now, guess what? We're going into Stimpack. Guess what's going to come up next? Combat Shields. Guess what's going to come up at some point here too? Probably right over here. I would imagine it's going to be +1 infantry weapon. So, ultimately we will arrive at a normal game. But now it's very much so up to Zoun to try and be the aggressor. They take turns. You get to be aggressive. I get to be aggressive. I see this with my cats all the time. My cats, they play fight about 17 times a day. And generally they take turns. One of them is supposed to be the one exposing their belly, and then the other one is supposed to be exposing their belly. They take a lot of turns. Apparently it's what's considered to be fair play. And Clem and Zoun are not much different. Well, Clem is thinking though, maybe I can also be a sneaky one. Even though I'm likely going to be the one defending, maybe I can sneak out a medevac full of units. That's an interesting blink, but he is going to be able to snipe that that stalker, or sorry, that bunker with ease. Gets an SCV, but what about this medevac drop? If this can shut down an entire Nexus worth, that would be an absolute disaster for Zoun. Looks like we're not gonna aim for it though. We're just gonna try and get the prism going. Instead, some reinforcing stalkers. Yeah. We'll be able to make quick work of it. Jimmy, I'm sorry. You did not miss the pickup. We called for you twice. Now we offloaded your baggage and everything. Well, it's a bit too late. Okay. Blinking out of the main base again. So look, in this small location, that add-on, nicely tucked away. If Clem would have spawned on the other side of the map, he probably would have lost one of those tech labs. In this instance, though, it's nice and protected. Medevac drop from earlier, trying to see if it can commit over here. Very quick reaction speed by Zoun. Yeah, and this is all very well done by Zoun. This is Clem trying to get a cheeky one, trying to get a quick win. Ultimately, what did he just get? He got a single pylon and like 2 probes for 8 marines and a medevac. That is not worth it at all, because it means that any sort of follow-up attack for him is also going to be quite a bit weaker. So we'll probably just see him trying to secure the 3rd base, just like we have seen a few times already, as soon as that command center here is done. Zoun actually still looking very focused to me. Yeah. It's lovely to see. I really hope Zoun can keep this, like, very obvious improvement going. He's dominant in Protoss versus Zerg already. And I mean, he's really making... He's making this extremely difficult for Clem. We could very easily see a game 9 here. Stupid close games. And he's playing miles better than he did, like, maybe 2 months ago. Yeah. I think 2 months ago or so. I did see some of his matches, but they didn't really look quite like this. Okay, a couple stalkers going down. Problem here, obviously, for Clem, right, is that he's been struggling a little bit later in the game. If he gets Liberators going, that would be amazing. But now that he's lost that medevac on the other side of the map, we are effectively immediately thinking about late game. It's difficult now for Clem to really commit to a big push. He can go for a big push maybe with 2-2 finishing up or something along those lines, but theoretically I think it's best here for Clem if he does what he usually likes to do, and that is to sit back, make that big macro game happen. It's probably the style that gives him the highest win rate, but also the one that is very risky, because there's about 1,000,001 things that can go wrong. Now, if Clem would have been an artificial intelligence, like Serral, that would not be a problem. Because, you know, you just adjust your coding and you just, change your programming a little bit, and it's not an issue. But there's a lot of different ways in which this can go horribly wrong. So Clem is going to try and test the waters right now, rather than sit back, and I can't blame him. The derpening is strong at this point in the game, and this is a scary army. Now, good move here by Zoun, forcing that army to siege up, far away from the Nexus. Clem is going to start inching closer, though. He does have a Zealot run by 2 on the other side of the map, but that one's going to get picked up by the reinforcing units. At the same time, Prism so critical here. It took a Widowmine to the face earlier, trying to use it to warp and reinforces in the main engagement. Zoun, you absolute madman. He's like, yep, oh, sorry. Just let me warp in a couple. Yep, just warping in some units. Don't mind me. Very polite. Dude, Zoun's playing so good. Second robo facility coming up right now too. And this is where Clem is like, yeah, I should have not have fought. Like, this map is usually quite easy to kill your opponent's base on when they try to expand in this direction, but Zoun handled that with confidence. Now, Zoun does seem to have a bit of a nature of overextending, though, in these kind of setups. And I wonder if this is another one of those things. Oh, yeah. He decides to cancel the warp in, and he realizes it, too. Loses 2 Colossi? Yeah. 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 The derpening. That's very pricey, and that suddenly justifies all of this again for Clem. Okay, so Ghost Academy. +2/+2 coming up. We've had some derpening from the Terran. We had some more significant derpening on the side of Zoun, although I would say the mistake was smaller. The end result was bigger. Yeah, these overextensions, they make the game ultimately a lot more difficult to predict. Honestly, I have no idea who ends up winning this now. Like, I have no clue. I would imagine it's Clem who's still the favorite here, but you can really see that both players are getting tired. And there's no denying that late-game Protoss compositions are super difficult. He does cancel it. Super difficult to deal with, that is. Although this is extremely zealot-heavy. He's basically just got zealots. This is like that hero-esque playstyle that he's been employing in PvT, but then without, you know, the worker count. So you need like 100 probes in order to pull this sort of style off properly. I don't think Zoun really intended on going into this unit composition, but it's just kind of what he ended up with. Once more, we have the Nova, but only a single one. This could be Clem's opportunity to try and strike. Zoun, by the way, trying to double expand here. He knows that this expansion is not likely to make it out. So, yep, instant cancel on that. Probe is not gonna live. Pylon goes down, but Zoun was already expecting to lose one of them. Now he's trying to see if he can grab some of those units. Bit of a clumsy engagement with all of those zealots. We are like 1 EMP away from this being absolutely amazing here for the Terran player, and he is indeed softening up a lot of those units. The Widowmine's also, yep, forcing those zealots to take so much damage. Not really a necessary fight for Zoun, but he just didn't want to have that engagement take place any closer to home, and maybe he's now got the army pinned up against the wall. That effect's once more coming in clutch. Such a good way to save an overextension. It's kind of like a Terran recall, except it's one that's pretty much instant. Okay. Supply difference. Yeah, we're kind of just chasing and tracing all of it. Clem still with a lead. A small one, but a lead nonetheless. That was very ambitious. Zoun's just fishing for a big hit now. That was disrespectful. You could see that Clem was like, yo, what? Sorry, buddy. Another one coming out of left field. Let's see if we can maybe get any other of those zealot run-bys to work. Nah, it's not gonna happen. Zoun's just fishing for big hits now. And it's starting to look a little desperate. Now, I don't think this is actually that desperate of a scenario yet. I don't think Clem is really going to commit hardcore until 3-3 is done, so we have some time left. Zoun, though, is feeling like he needs to get this game over with soon, and you know what? He may actually be right. He does not want to give this Terran player any chance to be transitioning towards Liberators again. We already have them coming up. We have the +2 air attacks also researching. Liberator ranged would be the nail in the coffin, I believe, here for Clem, but we don't quite have a fusion core yet. And obviously, he needs to make sure he has the command center count and all of the other bits and pieces in place for that sort of army to work. Disruptor count is growing, though. We don't have a whole lot of Vikings. 7 of them in total, actually. Where are they? Okay. They're on the other side of the map. Zoun was also thinking, maybe it's time to go back into the Colossus. And those zealots are still not to be underestimated. There's the fusion core, by the way. Clem knows where he wants to take this game. Okay. Okay. Yeah, alright. Yeah, and this is starting to now look a little ooga booga here for Protoss. We're going ooga booga zealot. Me make zealot. Me smash Terran. It's technically not a bad idea. But it's just that Clem's army is a little bit more sophisticated than that. One of those Novas going completely the wrong way. Disruptor pays the price. And Zoun not really making a lot of headway here. Clem is more than happy to be sitting here in this position and constantly be trading back and forth. Because he's pulling ahead as far as the upgrades go. He's getting himself that fusion core. He is making a more sophisticated army. Zoun is just hanging out. Try to make more of the same. And that generally does not lead far. Although we are, again, one bad engagement from Terran away from this being an absolute disaster. But he's got a really nice backup, and that's the planetary. So even if this area does not quite go his way, like if the fights in his region are not quite going his way, he can always back up to the safety of the planetary. Now that force field was real good. Ship weapons level 2 are done. Liberator count is growing. Zoun has seen the first few libs as well. He wants to pwn the libs. But can he do it? That's the question. At this point, I don't see anything that can really answer to it. He just... ideally, you want Tempest, but we are not even remotely close to Tempest territory. What he wants to do is make Stalkers. Stalkers and Dark Templar and just more of the Disruptors, and we're just trying to cause chaos. But in a perfect world, assuming Clem's programming is perfect too, this should be a very winnable spot for Terran. Zoun's still sitting at 69 workers. I wonder... I feel like he needs to be making more probes in this scenario. If he wants to go this sort of style, he needs like 100. Now, this fight over here is the best that Zoun has found so far, but also a little bit clumsy. Zoun's been going full Ooga Booga on 69 workers this entire time. You can make of that whatever you like. Clem, though, making his army better. Replacing lost supply with even more libs. We're going Caduceus Reactor. We're going Building Armor, so that's extra armor for buildings, as you may have already guessed. The upgrade is called Building Armor. There it is. Caduceus Reactor is the medevac energy improvement. Building Armor also does a bunch of other things. Like, for example, the amount of units you can put inside of a bunker. Yeah, very useful. We never see it. Liberator in the far bottom right, by the way. This is one of the big downsides when you don't go for any Skytoss approach. A Stalker on the perimeter might barely be able to reach, but obviously it's going to cost the Stalker as well. So I love this here by Clem, making it extremely difficult for Protoss to continue mining. And at this point, the writing is on the wall here for Zoun. Clem has been playing this game out expertly. It's like he's been summoning his final willpower, because both players are feeling the exhaustion settle in here. If he doesn't bring this one home, if Zoun ends up winning this match due to like a Terran misplay, I think Clem is completely drained. I don't think he can do anything anymore. But this is looking like a Clem win right now. What a series, dude. Best of 9s are just insane. I know a lot of players don't want to play best of 9s because it's just too much. But I mean, if it's your one series you're playing that day, may as well. Here we go. Zoun has been looking for an opportunity for so long. High-sec auto-tracking coming up. That is things like Missile Turret and Planetary Fortress ranged. These are luxury Terran upgrades. Zoun's making Zealots. It's not quite the same it's not the same thing, you know? Like, both of these guys are rich. But Clem's certainly richer. Kiting back to the safety of those Widow Mines, to the safety of the libs. And if that doesn't work, he's also got a Planetary Fortress to fall back to. Zoun, in the meantime, just no way of getting this base up and running again. No way of getting those mineral fields up and running anymore either. So despite the worker count being pretty decent, he's just losing so much mining. And Clem knows it. Clem is effectively suffocating a Protoss. Despite the fact that Protoss is being aggressive, there's really no way that Zoun can ever... Zoun is now basically begging for a mistake. Like, all we can really have here is Terran make a humongous error, Okay, we have a final blink. I think this is him trying to see if he can somehow bring it home. There is a planetary up on this high ground too, though. There's a lot more command centers to replace any of the ones that might be lost. Liberator now coming in clutch over here too. Zoun is going to try and see if he can cycle up north. Go after the Liberator here, maybe go after the planetary. Okay, Nova on the high ground going in pretty well. Gets a bunch of ghosts and a few Marines. But Clem is alive. At any moment here that Clem gets to breathe, he is going to pull further and further ahead. Yeah. Very well done. Very well done here by Clem. I think he was feeling the heat for just a little bit. Because at the beginning of the series, it was looking like a 5-0, and then suddenly the score was evened up 3-3. But I believe that Clem has managed to get the job done here in the end. Another aggressive blink forward. More Liberators are showing up. This time around, Clem decides to stand and fight with his Marauders. I mean, this is still a risky play for him. It's just that there's nothing on the back of this for Zoun. And Clem, he read that game like a book. He obtains the victory, 5-3 over Zoun. What a match.